He was ultimately convicted on 29 charges, was sentenced to 18 years in state prison in order to pay fines and restitution. And in addition to that, the Bureau had invested in a hedge fund that lost over $213 million. And the president of that hedge fund was convicted on various fraud charges and sentenced to 12 years in prison. These are the events that inspired what we call today the internal audit law in Ohio. It's a proposal that I started working on as a state legislature to help restore the public's trust in state government. But this legislation wasn't passed while I was still serving in the legislature, and so I believed these issues had not been addressed. So when I took office as Auditor of State, I set this as my first public policy priority. I believe that in order to help restore trust and confidence in state government, action was necessary to address the structural deficit that permitted the scandals at the Bureau. And as a CPA, I had a pretty good idea where to start. Create a control structure and an environment that provides independent oversight, accountability, and transparency in the way state government operates and spends tax dollars. The law was signed by the governor in November of 2007, and it establishes an independent state audit committee consisting of experienced, autonomous, and qualified professionals, and also requires a systematic review of agency internal controls to improve the integrity of the state's financial reporting system. This structural reform will help prevent future fraud, waste, and abuse of taxpayer dollars in state government, and it is just good, sound public policy. I also believe that this law is one of the most significant pieces of government accountability reform legislation passed in the Ohio General Assembly last year. It protects taxpayers from potential misspending and creates a more efficient, effective, accountable, and transparent government structure. I am definitely thankful for this opportunity to make a difference every day in the lives of Ohioans. I feel very fortunate and blessed that the citizens of Ohio have placed their faith and confidence to be the watchdog of taxpayer dollars. One of my top priorities as Auditor of State is to make sure your tax dollars are spent legally and appropriately. Making sure government entities are accountable for your tax dollars is our primary goal. But unfortunately, as we all know, in organizations large and small, there is always the potential for fraud, waste, and abuse. And when you have more than 5,600 clients like we do, many are the communities in which you live, or perhaps the schools in which your children attend, who spend billions of dollars each year, you will find those who are misusing tax dollars. And here are just a few examples of where there was a lapse in accountability and transparency, where our auditors uncovered misspending just since I've taken office. We had 2 Springfield Township employees in Clark County racked up more than $8,000 in personal phone calls to Japan in just 1 month. We also had a special audit for the Lorain County Board of Mental Health, where we reported that a former employee illegally misspent more than $19,000 to pay her own bills and to make improvements to her home. We also found a former village clerk in Seneca County. She paid herself for time that she didn't even work. She also used the village credit card to buy 3 cell phones for her family and pay for a hotel room in Kentucky for a family vacation. In total, she stole more than $29,000. And the former executive director of the Coshocton Port Authority was very creative. In fact, he recreated bank statements to cover up his own theft and used taxpayer dollars to buy personal items like flowers and jewelry. He also used taxpayer dollars to get cash advances and make college tuition payments. In total, he misspent more than $64,000. And a recent example right here in Cleveland of our office holding an entity accountable for the tax dollars they spend is the special audit that we just completed in January of the Ministerial Daycare Association. Our auditors found that the daycare was inflating enrollment and receiving Head Start dollars for toddlers who didn't attend the program. We cited that agency for our largest finding for recovery ever, over $7.5 million. And the real tragedy in this story is that more needy children in Cleveland should have benefited from those Head Start dollars. So, what's the headline from these fraudulent tales? The criminals are smart, and we have to be smarter. And my hope is that examples like these will make people think twice and carefully before cheating you, the taxpayers of Ohio. But these examples also highlight the vital need for oversight, transparency, and accountability throughout all levels of an organization, public or private. We have a more recent example in our office, yet I think it's just as important, for the need to improve accountability of public tax dollars that stems from a letter that our office recently sent to our clients. Our finance department was instituting new invoicing procedures for all of our clients, and in an effort to be proactive, sent out a letter explaining the new billing system. Also included with this letter was a sample invoice, very clearly marked sample invoice, that was made generically to County Board. The addressee was John Doe, Administrative Assistant. The address was 1234 Main Street in Columbus, Ohio, with a balance due of $648.63 and a due date of April 30th, 2008. Well, so far we have had 69 public entities pay this sample bill and over 200 phone calls with comments like, "John Doe is not my administrative assistant," or "We are not located at 1234 Main Street in Columbus, Ohio." Some of the checks were 3- and 4-party checks where a fiscal officer or several other public officials had to sign off and approve the expenditure before it was finally sent to our office. We even had one of our 88 counties pay the sample bill, but there was one additional problem. The check was made payable to Jim Petro, who we all know has not been the auditor for the state of Ohio for nearly 6 years. And we received the last check in the mail on June 17th, nearly 2 months after the original due date. This example clearly illustrates the importance of accountability and the need for proper procedures and good internal controls in all organizations, public, private, and nonprofit. And as community leaders, we must provide the direction and promote accountability and transparency in our organizations. And my office will continue to operate exactly that way. These examples also highlight the important jobs that we all have to do, individually and collectively, to help identify potential public corruption, and those that are entrusted with your tax dollars are held accountable. We have several investigative units in our office who have the daily task of rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse of public tax dollars. And as state auditor, I want to use the tools and the professional expertise of my office to partner with law enforcement agencies in an effort to make government more accountable for how they spend your tax dollars. First, we have a special investigations unit. It was established at the Auditor of State's office to provide local officials with additional tools to root out fraud, waste, and abuse in government spending. The SIU has 4 commissioned peace officers professionally trained to detect and prevent fraud in state and local government. These investigators have an extensive background in criminal investigations and must have at least 5 years investigative experience. The unit's chief investigator has nearly 20 years of state and local crime fighting experience and is certified by the National White Collar Crime Center to train other law enforcement officers how to properly investigate certain criminal financial crimes. The unit has a unique skill. They start with interviewing witnesses and suspects to preparing search warrants. They collect and preserve evidence for investigations and serve as liaisons to prosecutors and other outside agencies. Essentially, they conduct the investigative legwork and help piece together the parts of a crime. And our SIU has had a lot of success. Since taking office, SIU investigations have resulted in 23 people charged, 18 people convicted, and 41 cases are currently pending. A good recent example of the work of our Special Investigations Unit was recently released. It's the village of Lockland, which is in southwest Ohio, where we had a mayor's court clerk was involved in a scheme to defraud the village of more than $188,000. She was pretty crafty, too. The clerk discontinued the use of mayor's court software and relied solely on a manual receipt book to track financial transactions, and she pocketed the cash.